October 14th. Perle Noire, darling. Live.
Splendid.
Chez Noir.
All right. Well, shall we just dive in?
Yeah.
Fabulous. Welcome to WEBurlesque, the podcast. I am your host, Viktor Devonne, and tonight I have the immense pleasure of sitting in the home of Perle Noire, who is one of it's just a fascinating. I would say a character here in New York City, but I think that I would possibly associate you as a character because I don't know you beyond the stage, and you do give me the sense that you put it all out on stage.
Absolutely. I'm one of the performers. I like to let people know that I don't have a persona. I am just who I am and who I've always been, which is a beautiful imperfection.
I recently saw your one-person show, and where was that? That was
at Drum. Yes, and thank you for coming, by the way.
Oh, yes, my pleasure.
Yes.
I was very curious because when you hear burlesque performer, one-person show, you say to yourself, well, how long is that act? Because burlesque has a finite number of resources.
Yes.
Usually how much you have on.
Yes.
And admittedly, your show really seemed to be, in my interpretation, a series of monologues through the music of through a soundtrack that you curated. Yes. Some dance pieces. A striptease element. You did get down to pasties, but it was a catharsis rather than a titillation or a because the first act actually unexpectedly ends with you sobbing and leaving through the kitchen. Yes. Which I gotta tell you was not anticipating.
Darling, and I gotta tell you, I can't believe I made it for Act 2 because I was completely drained. Everything was real. I wasn't acting. I was the whole entire piece was a healing ceremony for me and sort of a moment to let people look inside of my diary, if you will. And so, yes, it was very cathartic, and I've always felt like I wanted to push myself artistically in the realm of burlesque and my students to where it's like anyone can show their body off, but let's, I want the final reveal to be the heart. Yeah. And I want to be a gift to the audience, and I want people to leave feeling inspired to unleash their own phoenix, if you will.
Well, I mean, it seemed pretty dire by the end of Act 1.
I can't believe I was...
Well, part of it may have helped was that the beginning of Act 2 is pretty rageful.
Yes.
So that probably helped kick you through it.
It helped me kick it through it, and I think, too, because now I am definitely not perfect. I've definitely... not everyone loves me. Not everyone considers me their mother of burlesque. I've had some instances, like situations where I had to sort of let the hammer down, and they've seen, a different side of me. But most people have not seen me be mad or any kind of rage. So I think it was also very shocking to people for me to come out to ring the alarm. Yes. And really... I think you can feel that, I've been through something where I felt that angry to where I wanted to set the entire room on fire. Noah
and Connie, who are fabulous New York regulars who go to basically everything. I sort of call them mom and dad in the audience.
Yes.
I think Connie had even mentioned she was not expecting the roller coasters, and she's seen it all.
She has seen it all, and she's come to all the House of Noire shows. And she was like, I was not prepared, which made me feel very good as an artist that I shocked you guys.
Yeah. I first met you and worked with you in Coney Island. Yes. For Velocity Child's All Madonna show.
Yes.
And you closed the night with Frozen.
Yes.
And as a Madonna fan, as someone who has been a fan of Madonna's since about 1990, when I saw Frozen on the list, and I had not met you, I had only heard of you, I was like, she's doing the full 6 minute 29 seconds. What really? all right. And And sure enough, I knew when it started. I'm like, okay, yeah, unless this is a cut or something, this is it. And you had like 3 pieces of clothing on,
Yes.
and I was like, for a 6.5-minute song, let's go. Let's see. Let's just go.
Come on, Pro Noir.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Tell me what you're gonna do.
And I mean, and also like it was this beautiful pink.
Yes, Big Fanny Annie made that beautiful duster,
and it was sheer.
Yeah.
And then you had on a
Just
broad
nude,
panty set.
Nude set,
Yeah. And not even a color scheme I would have associated with this. I think most people would have gone with like blues or whites, but
yes, which and I try to shy away from doing what's obvious.
Yeah. I appreciated that a lot, and I just was like, well. And then I felt like that was a really good introduction because it was sort of in a context that I could that I was familiar with.
Yes.
And everyone was doing. That was a great show. I mean, you had Darlinda,
one of my favorite shows, actually. Yeah.
Really great set, and then it had been a little while, and I hadn't seen you, and you were running around. You were constantly in progress and helping other people with their progress.
Yes. Yeah.
And I guess about 2 years ago, you created the Noir Gems.
Yes, 2 years ago. Our anniversary was on the 11th. And I created the House of Noire because I was preparing to retire for a relationship I was in.
Okay.
And so I
retire from burlesque.
Retire from performing because his family was very conservative, and I wasn't allowed. And they're kind of like a affluent family in his country, and so it was, if you're going to be in our family, you cannot do anything risque. And I made a difficult choice to sort of retire, and I said, but I still feel called to mentor, and so that's how the House of Noire came about. And then he called off the wedding about 2 weeks before I was supposed to move to his country, and so the one-woman show was a result of and actually before the one-woman show, 7 Deadly Sins was the first result of my 7 stages of grief.
Okay.
And I turned it into the 7 Deadly Sins show, and then the one-woman show. So,
which were all the Gems doing solos.
Yes. And I choreographed that entire show. And so, the House of Noire was born because I planned on retiring, actually.
So these weren't necessarily going to be people that you were, as if they could, but replace you but you could give your stamp on and say, I trust that my world is in good hands.
Absolutely. That's what it was about, and I wanted, because I do feel called to be a mentor. I think I'm a very unique teacher. And like I said, the community gave me the nickname Mama Perle. I did not give myself that name. And so I wanted to create a dance company, and I also wanted to create the first burlesque house inspired by Paris is Burning, inspired by the House of Ninja specifically.
Okay.
And so I just wanted to create my own little family and create this sacred group of this sacred world where I had these proteges, and I was able to sort of guide them on their journey and send them out into the world to also help and inspire other people. That's what I thought the house was going to be, but then it turned into something completely different. I wasn't expecting to get into Beehoff on our first try. I wasn't expecting to win on our first try, and also a lot of people don't know that was also our first time debuting the act live.
Yes.
We had only been in the studio. Now, we did about 500 hours in the studio. But that was the first time with an audience? With an audience.
On a stage of any real type?
Yeah. Stage of any kind. And so I wasn't expecting it. And then the House of Noire became like its own entity. And it's like, I see it now as a theater, a very cathartic, transformative theater dance company inspired by burlesque. Yes.
What was your criteria when deciding who should be the founding members, really?
Yes. Well, I definitely wanted, for one thing, because I had so many students and I knew a lot of students were going to come, I didn't want to be biased, so I had a group of judges. But my criteria is I wanted people who were extremely elegant in their movement, and not necessarily that they had to have dance training, because I'm actually not trained. I trained myself. But I wanted people who were very elegant, people who had this almost like a diamond in the rough, like people that I could see them in a way that they couldn't see themselves yet, and I wanted to help them shine.
Something that was left to really cultivate.
Yes. And then also people who weren't going to be afraid to be ugly on stage, meaning be extremely emotional on stage, and to show their scars as much as a beautiful encrusted gown.
So like you were looking for vulnerability.
Yes.
And I would say finding performers and knowing who you ended up selecting, these types of performers that are going to also be open to you telling them what to do, basically.
Yes, and I'm not
with an iron fist.
They will tell you that I am not. Mama Perle and Perle Noire in a work setting are two different. It's two different energies. I am extremely particular and honest, and I could make you cry in a beautiful way or a harsh way. And I'm just like, this is just what it is. That looks terrible. No, do it again. I mean, I'm very, very particular, but it's never in a way to cut people down. It's like, no, that looks terrible. You're not going to inspire the audience in this way. And I know you want to inspire the audience. So let me help you inspire the audience. So yeah, you have to be willing for me to sort of, you have to be willing to fly, actually. And that sounds weird, but it's like people are actually more afraid of success than they are failure. So you have to be willing.
Failure's familiar.
Yeah, so you have to be willing to succeed in order to be a gem of burlesque and be in my house.
I think we're programmed these days to think of things in reality television, and that too many egos in a troupe, especially those with success each, that might cause dramatics. But I can't imagine you suffering any fools. So
no.
So anybody accepting the role as a gem, I would think would be like, we'll check it at the door, and then
you have to, because although I have never won at the Burlesque Hall of Fame, I am one of the most successful burlesque performers of this generation, and I dare say I'm the most successful Black burlesque performer since Josephine Baker.
I would have to agree.
Without a title.
Yeah.
So I almost feel like that makes me more of a queen, actually, because I
self-defined,
and because I'm the people's choice. Just like I didn't give myself the name Mama Perle, I also never called myself a queen or a headliner. It was the people who decided that I was their queen. So there's nothing that like no one can really come for me, and I also dare say I will challenge anyone on stage. Anyone on stage. I've gotten on stage with every solidified burlesque queen in the world. I've toured with Dita Von Teese. I've gone on stage with After a Woman in a $100,000 costume on, and still was able to be confident in who I was in my $100 costume. And Dita was very encouraging to me when I first joined her show. So for me, it's like no one can come to me with an ego, because it doesn't matter what they have won. My receipts surpass their receipts. That is a fact. That's just a fact.
Oh, sure.
That is just a fact. And I have had the privilege and the honor of also having so many standing ovations in places like New York City, in places like a Duane Park, in places like the McKendrick Hotel, having David LaChapelle stand up for me when I'm performing in Suzanne Bart's show. So no one can really ever come to me with an ego, because I'm still at the point to where I'm like, well, we can hit the stage right now, and you can put on whatever costume you want and whatever prop you want, and I'll go on stage with a brown paper bag, and we'll see.
We'll see.
We'll see.
There are 5 of them, yes?
Yes, I had to think because there's been a lot of changes.
Okay.
Lillian Lays has joined Company XIV. We're all really excited for her and rooting for her. So yes, I would say there's 5 now.
Okay.
There were 6.
There were 6.
Yes.
So, and the one I knew the most before they joined was Pearl's Daily.
Okay.
And Pearl's and I worked together a number of years ago, and then I had done a show that she had produced, and she was essentially a dance captain for you,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Yes.
So, and I was talking to another performer that I had more or less recently met, Tara Dice.
Oh, yes. I love Paradise. She's so precious.
And she was, I had interviewed her for the podcast earlier in the year, and she was explaining that there were times where when you're out of town, you are still at rehearsal.
Yes.
And you do everything remotely, and you're not just like hoping for the best.
It's pulling together. I'm like, so I'm here. Is everyone on time? Are you stretching? What are we doing? Yeah.
Yeah. So
Iron Fist.
Who do you throw in charge of making sure that the computer's facing the right way so that so that no one can
yes.
get away with anything?
You know, they all sort of take charge. I would say I never have to worry about that. They all are like, they're all checking the camera. They're all making sure everyone's being held accountable.
Mm. And you also have in your company a burlesque queen, Miss Poison Ivory.
Yes, Miss Poison Ivory.
Who won Miss Exotic World.
Yes, she did.
You also have Tutu Toussaint.
Oh, yes. Yes. Toussaint. And I just want to also say this really quickly, that actually every member of the house, except for Busy, and this is only because she's not ready to compete yet, but all of my gems have won a title. So the House of Noire is a house of queens, actually.
Oh, there you go.
Actually, everyone has won a queen title.
It was Pearl's Daily just
Yes.
scored Miss Coney
Yes,
Island.
in Paradise.
Miss New Jersey.
Yes. And Tutu Toussaint also won at the Southern Exposure. Or I might be saying the wrong. There's so many.
I know. There's so
festivals. Forgive me, Tutu Toussaint, if you're listening. You know I know what it is, but you know I'm terrible with remembering names. But she has also won a title, a queen title.
And the final member is
Busy LeBois.
The one who I have not had the pleasure of.
Oh, and this one is a beautiful one. She really knows how to emote beautifully. And she's so elegant and so graceful. A few legends at the Burlesque Hall of Fame called her the Lana Turner of burlesque. Marinka being one. So that's also the thing. It's like when an actual legend gives you your tagline, honey, you just can't even. That's priceless.
That's true.
So Marinka, who's one of my burlesque mothers, has called. She's like, Busy LeBois is the Lana Turner of burlesque. So just saying.
Now you mentioned Josephine Baker.
Yes, and she's everywhere.
Everywhere,
She's everywhere in my home.
The first thing I did is I asked to use the restroom, and she used your shower curtain.
Yes. Yes, she is.
And now I'm in your living room area, and she's there.
Yeah.
Was she your gateway into burlesque? Was she the first person that resonated with you, or?
So when I was introduced to burlesque, it was 2002.
Okay.
And I auditioned for a musical that this lady named Jeannie Hatt wrote. It was an all-black burlesque musical that she wrote and produced the music and everything herself. And so I got the role of Lolly Fedici, who was an ex-burlesque queen who was now working at some like dive strip club. And she had an abusive boyfriend named Tron. It was a very interesting story. And so, of course, I was like, what is burlesque? So let me find out about it. And I found out about B. Hoff and Dixie Evans and Lottie the Body and Tony Elling and Josephine Baker. And I loved everyone, but Josephine Baker really, really touched my spirit because our childhood was similar. You know, she was abused. She was called ugly most of her life, and she just did not fit in. And so she went from being this poor girl surviving like the St. Louis riots, dancing in blackface, to becoming the only woman to speak at the March on Washington, to living in a castle, to having her own rainbow tribe of adopted children from different countries to prove that racism was something that is taught. It's not something instilled in you when you're born, and to becoming like the only black leading lady in a silent film to have a romantic scene. I was just so captivated by her audacity, and especially during that time. And so I felt called to dedicate my life to paying homage to her and all the other men and women who went through the back of the theater to headline, so that I may go through the front of a place like the Sydney Opera House.
Right.
So that is why she's sort of like I felt chosen to pay homage to her also. I felt chosen, and sometimes I feel like she comes in during my performances.
Do you feel pressure as a one of the few black burlesque performers that you have to be a specific way so that you properly, whatever properly ends up meaning, represents for a predominantly white audience?
Yes, on two different sides of that spectrum. So when I first started out, I ended up doing the Josephine Baker tribute with the banana skirt. But what a lot of people don't know is that I actually never intended to do the banana skirt. I wanted to recreate her iconic tux look because she actually made that famous before Marlena.
Okay.
And it was destroyed during Katrina, that costume. And so I needed something in a pinch. And of course, a banana skirt is so cheap. Like after Katrina, I was homeless. It took a while to get back on my feet. And so I was working with Rick DeLopp with Bust Out Burlesque in New Orleans, one of the first white producers who definitely was like, you're black, you need to play the savage role. Not bluntly like that, but in his request. And he's not the only producer who's done that with me, And so there was a pressure to finally get out of playing the savage. That's where the pressure was, because on one hand, I was like, it's great to pay homage to Josephine Baker. I feel chosen to from her. And it's great to travel the world and keep her memory alive. But I've always wanted to let people know and have people understand, but the banana skirt was just such a small part of her legacy. And if she only did the banana skirt, she wouldn't have had a legacy. It was because she put on a gown. And I had so many white producers telling me that, no, we're going to hire you for Josephine Baker only, or when we have a black role. In this day and age, that's still happening. And so I felt the pressure to show white audiences and white producers that glamour belongs to everyone, not just a beautiful white woman. And I love my white sisters, but glamour doesn't just belong to them. And so then that's when I retrained the audience. I was like, no, the audience, you're going to love me in my gown, just like you love Kalani Coconuts in her gown, or Michelle Lamore in her gown. You're going to love me in my gown, and I'm going to stand still. I'm not going to do cartwheels, even though I can. I'm not going to do a high energy number just because that's what you've decided as a black woman. That's all I have the right to do on stage. So in regards to the pressure, I feel the pressure to retrain the audience members, white, black, and everything in between, that glamour belongs to everyone. And like right now, I'm really all about my Nefertiti act, because I want people to understand that there's another iconic black image other than the savage.
Nobility.
Yes.
Yeah. This is how you ended the one person show. Your what did you call it? The healing, the dramatic healing. What was the term?
Very transformative, cathartic.
Yes. And you
healing ceremony.
Hair ceremony.
Yes.
I put on
my Nefertiti crown. Yes.
And the show's done.
And the show is done because I've now put my crown back on.
Right.
Because also with the relationship, I took my crown off. Yeah. For that relationship, I dimmed my own light. Yeah. For that relationship, seeking something that I had all along, just like, the story of the Wiz or the Wizard of Oz. You know, Dorothy had what she needed all along, and so did I.
You end with home, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It was. I'm a big soundtrack nerd, so when I hear. I love choices.
Yeah, me too.
I love.
If my choices are very
precise. Yeah.
Precise.
I love conscious choices, and every once in a while, that's why when White Elephant first began, and it was a partnership between two directors. I was one of them, and a lot of people would say, "Oh," and that's why I don't eschew the term producer, but I do like the term director because I do consider it to be curation.
Yes.
There's a lot of trust involved, and I know it's at a bar a lot of the time, and I know that it seems lower stakes. It may be lower stakes for everybody else. It keeps me up at night. I mean,
listen, I hear you.
And so what I would do is every once in a while is I would find a song and I would suggest it. And what would happen a lot of times is people would come to me looking for suggestions because I have a good sense of musicality, and I have good sense. I know what I'm good at, and I'm good at saying that would work with you. That's too obvious. Like you're doing an act and you're dressed as this type of persona, and you're taking this obvious song, and not just because it's obvious in burlesque, because we have our greatest hits.
Yes, we do.
But you're also like there's so much more you can explore lyrically, because the audience you're gonna have a couple different types of audiences. You're gonna have an audience that is going to hoot and holler no matter what you do because they're conditioned, or you're gonna have people who are gonna be staring and waiting to see why you are doing what you're doing.
Yes.
When you are choreographing something, either for yourself or for somebody else, where do you start?
I start with their truth.
Okay.
So tell me your truth. And the question I ask a lot of people that disturbs them when they take private sessions with me, or the gyms or whomever, why are you doing that? And why should the audience care? So tell me that first. Let's discuss this first. Okay, great. So let's then talk about the music. Why are you moving that way to that particular sound? And these kind of things, as I say it, it sounds extremely like simple and non-threatening, but
once you start getting like, oh, I don't know why.
Yes, then it's like, right. So let's start from the beginning. So that's where I start. I start with, what is your actual truth? And what do you want the audience to experience? Are you a selfish performer, or are you trying to be a gift? Both are fine. There's no wrong answer, because this is your art.
Sure.
But you need to come to terms and be honest about which one it is.
Are you a gift?
Or are you a selfish performer? Tell me which one it is. And be proud of whatever your choice is.
Sure.
Be proud of whatever your choice.
It could be act to act. It could be movement to movement.
It could be movement to movement, act to act. It could be... And in that one act, you can have selfish moments and moments where you want to be a gift. That's fine. But just be honest about what it is you're doing and why.
when you're developing a concept show like the Seven Deadly Sins, now that has some framework to it, because we have a pretty good sense of what envy should look like. But that could be fun to mess with, because they may not get the envy they're expecting. And we have a good sense of what pride might be. How do you decide how not to be a cliche when you're working with such notably familiar elements
or a theme? What I wanted to do was explore the emotional side of that. So, for instance, with envy, when I've seen other people do Seven Deadly Sins, it's a green act.
Yeah.
As to whereas what I did was I asked Paradise to play the Black Swan, because that story is about two entities and one being jealous of the other, one being envious of what the other one had. So let's retell the story of Black Swan, so that we're talking about envy and we're talking about the emotion of what envy looks like, and that it's not just, and here's a girl dancing in a green costume.
Yeah.
And so when I did Lust, instead of having someone do a very sensual act, I asked Busy LeBois to dance with a beautiful dance veil, and it was inspired by a beautiful picture of Marilyn Monroe, the picture of her with this beautiful red scarf. And Lust,
Oh, I know that one.
yes. And Lust, not like, oh, look at my body, I want to turn you on. Lust, crying out for someone to just see you. And so if that means you have to, the desperation of lust. The desperation of lust. So I wanted to...
everyone makes lust very sexy, but lust can be...
many things.
So many things,
Many things. And for greed, instead of having someone dance with money, I had Toussaint play Cleopatra. For vanity, I had Poison Ivory. Her act was inspired by Xerxes. For gluttony, instead of having someone go on stage and with a lot of food or a lot of drinks, I danced to Phil Collins in the Air and just portrayed the gluttony of self-destruction and staying in sad emotion. So gluttony is just basically settling and like excess of something. And so for me, I portrayed the excess of being comfortable with being sad and comfortable with being angry.
Which you said was the first real step
Yes.
professionally to tell that story. Is there more of that story to tell, or one night only and hopefully for the best?
I think for 2019 we will go back into Seven Deadly Sins, but because of the healing work that I've done it's been about 2 years since the breakup, I believe that we'll tell a different version of the Seven Deadly Sins. Yeah, so be on the lookout for that. Yeah.
You think it'll be, I don't know, those all sound very dramatic, obviously. Is there a joyfulness or a lightness that you like to play with
I think so for the next round, yeah. Yeah, because what it is this like, the story of this angel named Dido who, falls in love with the human who tells her the only way she can prove her love is to fall from heaven to be with him. And once she does it, she realizes that he was just a demon in disguise. And then she finds herself trying to find her path in life. And on her way, she's introduced to the Seven Deadly Sins. And so she's been introduced to them. And now I'd like to tell the story of what happens to Dido after the introduction to the Seven Deadly Sins and what kind of choices she will make now that she's roaming Earth.
What is your favorite thing about roaming Earth yourself? Do you enjoy travel?
I do. My favorite thing about roaming Earth is the transformation.
In what way?
Because when you go to a new place, it's automatically a new beginning because you haven't touched land there. Or even if you have, you're going back.
And it's new land.
It's still new land. And so the transformation of the possibility of recreating yourself, the possibility of meeting new people on your path and what they will do to inspire you or to even hurt you, which would still inspire you to learn something. So for me, it's the beauty of transformation. I really have a thing for butterflies. I've always loved butterflies, and I've always loved peacocks, and I've always loved the stars and the moon. And even the stars and the moon represent transformation to me.
Phases, yeah.
Yeah, phases. So when I was little, I used to sneak out of the house to talk to the moon. And so, yeah, what I love most about being on Earth and traveling is how many times I've been able to transform.
Even if you're lugging along
Yes.
trunks of costumes.
Yes.
And, yeah.
Yes. And just growing up poor and growing up being told constantly that I was a mistake, you know, or that I didn't have any real place or value in this world, or that my only value was my body or my vagina. And so being able to create my own destiny, to be able to become my ancestors' wildest dreams, to be able to dare to believe in the thoughts in my head, to be able to dare to believe that I deserve to imitate the sun is a joy.
Where were you born?
I was born in Dallas, Texas.
Dallas.
She's in the heart of Texas. Yes.
And you found where did you go from there?
From there, I went with about $300 in a backpack to Vegas at 19.
Okay.
Took the Greyhound.
To become a star or just to get the hell
To
out?
become a star. I was going to be a showgirl. Didn't realize you had to be tall. So I ended up getting a gig as a backup dancer and singer for a lounge band.
Okay.
And then after September 11th, of course, the tourism went down. So then I found myself in New Orleans.
Just to find another disaster.
Yes. And then found myself here in New York.
Yeah. So you were there when Hurricane Katrina hit. Were you performing in New Orleans?
I was just starting. I was doing that show,
Right.
the musical, and it was just the beginning stages of that musical. So
Did you end up doing the musical?
yes, and we ended up doing it. What I would do in the beginning stage before Katrina is I would take the Greyhound bus every weekend from New Orleans to New York to do the musical here.
Oh, okay.
And then she did it in New Orleans, and then we went to the Fringe in Montreal.
Okay. So this was a relatively long-term project.
I did that project about 3 years.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. So when you came to New York, how did you make the transition from girl out of town to Mama Pearl, to being this, not only a figurehead for the community because of your advocacy for people of color in this scene and in general, and your presence in your agency and you're being seen, and your production and all of that. How did you develop a reputation? Yeah.
Well, so when I was coming here in the beginning, no one knew me, and it was after I competed for Best Debut in 2008 at the Burlesque Hall of Fame. That's when people sort of discovered me, and a lot of New Yorkers were there that year. And so after I won that, I just emailed everyone, like Tigger and Bob, who presented me to New York. So Bob is the reason why I was able to sort of have my stamp here in New York, because she presented me. And so then other producers hired me after Bob presented me, actually. And after winning Best Debut. And then the following year, I was considered a headliner in burlesque, because I toured with Immodesty Blaze at the time. And then shortly after, I toured with Dita.
How did you, I'm assuming there was an audition for Dita, and there was some practice involved? You hand selected?
I was. So she had just tweeted. This is when Twitter was still popular. And because I asked her, how did she find out about me? And she said, yeah, I just tweeted, who should I hire? Who's in New Orleans? I want to do a show there. And she said that it was, my name just kept popping up, and she saw my YouTube video, and she was like, yes. And so I went to LA to do her first run, which I imagine was like a live audition. They didn't say that, but I figured that's what it was. And she took to me, and she, like I said, she was always very encouraging. She's always told me that I'm a star.
Have you been able to, there's a certain mystery surrounding Dita that I know she has also helped cultivate. Because it's no fun if you necessarily, see Dita, what she looks like first out of bed.
Yeah.
There's a certain presentation, and I also see that in you, that there is a while in acceptance of the imperfections, that you want to look your best.
Yes.
And you want to look put together. And I also recognize that you demand that
of the gems. Yes. I don't want to see you with anything less than at least red lipstick on.
Okay.
Do not show up in my presence.
So that's coming to work.
To work, to rehearsals, to travel, you most certainly need on an ensemble. If you're having a bad day, I'll allow some flats for a moment, I suppose, but I'll be very disappointed. I need a full ensemble on. I need you to present your best. Why? Because your ancestors paved the way for you, and how dare you walk on this earth have ASS in it. Yes. And I have kicked down a lot of doors, and so do not come in my presence without the respect that I deserve.
Unapologetic. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm a very loving person, but I'm also very passionate and very strict as well.
I mean, there's a clearness in it. There's not a. I mean, one could say that it's demanding, or that
I'm
it's
definitely
difficult.
demanding.
But
yes.
I mean, there's also, but this is how it needs to be for it to work. Yeah, it's just how it is. When working with people, and people do fail to meet you at that expectation.
Yes, I say, get out of my face now and come back when you're ready. I will. What usually happens when a gem or anyone is not prepared for me, what I usually do is I say, okay, I'm going to leave the room, and when I get back, you will.
You're gonna get this all together.
You're gonna be ready.
Yeah.
I'm gonna leave so that you may have an opportunity to gather yourself.
I mean, it certainly weeds out those who can't do that.
Yes, because I can't. It's
necessarily
just
there.
not. We're not compatible.
Yeah. How early do you spring that on them? Day one?
Day one.
So auditions for the first set of the gems. No one's allowed in sweatpants?
No, I mean if if it's now in the winter, you got those sweatpants on to warm up, but then let's take them off. I'd like to see some stockings and a beautiful leotard and your makeup on.
I mean, it gives you the full effect. That way you know what it will look like.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also, it's for you. It's also for you, because I want you to know that you should always present your higher self. It's not a thing of, it may be because I grew up poor. So for me, I'm not going to miss on an opportunity to come dressed or to be made up or to be glamorous. And it's not a stuck up thing or I'm looking down on other people who choose not to do that. But it's like, but why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? And it's going to make you feel better. And it's going to make people treat you differently. When we travel as a house, we get treated very nicely. A lot of times, yes, it's like, oh, yes, no, you don't need to wait in that line, guys. Come on right through. I mean, that has happened many times when we've traveled. Oh, don't worry about it. Here's the champagne's on us.
Are you still a fan of burlesque? Do you enjoy
Absolutely.
it? And I'm sure you've seen
I've seen it all. I've seen every kind of burlesque. I've seen the highest of glamour to someone wearing a $100,000 or more costume, and I've also seen someone simulate eating a baby on stage. Yes, with the flesh and everything coming off of a baby doll without a warning, and so of course it did trigger people. I've seen it all.
Yeah. What is your what type of burlesque speaks the highest to you, or speaks the most true to you?
The most true to me is a burlesque number or presentation where a person is not acting. I hate to see people act, and I hate to see people counting in their head. So an act that isn't heavily choreographed, and an act where you are being true and you're not acting sexy, you're not acting funny, you're not acting dramatic. And sexiness is the embodiment of you living in your truth, whatever that is.
And sexy can exist in all kinds of people. People you would not necessarily expect to find sexy.
Well, that's why I say it's the embodiment of you living in your truth, and that will make you sexy.
Yeah, it's interesting for me because when I first started performing, I was the only guy a lot of times, and so I would do a lot of shows which were. They were still geared for mixed audiences, but the host invariably would be spending most of the time laughing or joking as a guy, saying, "Wouldn't it be funny if he also took off his clothes?" And I'm like, I'm backstage, and I'm like, "Well, give him 20 minutes." Because I'm about to. Yeah, wouldn't it be hilarious if a guy did it? And then eventually they get to that note card and they're like, oh, okay.
A guy is going to do it, which I love. I'd love to see more guys, actually.
Yes. And I would love to see more variety of guys.
Yes.
Guys that have different truths and different backgrounds. To see the people, the men that I am extraordinarily lucky to work with include people like Rudy Valentino and Monroe Lily and Miscellaneous Dom Top.
And I love all three.
And all three of them are extraordinarily different.
And they're in a different range. Yeah, I love the range between them. Yeah.
And and New York has some extraordinarily talented gentlemen.
Yes.
Some of them are extraordinarily raunchy.
Yes.
Some of that, like, so you have Chris Harder.
Yes. He likes to thrust about. I'm like, yes, thrust it.
But that's his truth.
I am here for Chris Harder is someone I love. That's a very beautiful person and a good friend of mine. And I'm always here for the thrust of the harder. The harder thrust. Yes.
I was speaking to Broody, who came up unexpectedly. I don't know if anybody saw him coming, but he's made his stamp, hasn't he?
Yes, he has.
And he was saying how another performer had said, like, "Oh, I'd really love to see you like rough it up a little or try something less than a little different than what you have." And he was just like, "Okay, that's great. That's not going to happen. Like it's just inauthentic."
Right, so I can't do it.
Yeah, and I remember, and he was like, and I looked him up and down, and I went, no.
Yeah, and it's like, you don't need to see me do that, because there's someone else that
Somebody
does
else
that.
is going to do it.
Yes.
Yeah. I paint my face, and I do a specific thing, and way back, not much anymore, which I'll take as a compliment, way back, I used to get asked, so when are you going to try it without it? What's going to happen if you do it? And I'm like, yeah, the thing is, I am extraordinarily comfortable in that face. And why is up for multitudes of interpretation. I've had people who have said like, oh, it makes you more expressive. I've heard people say that, oh, it's like a mask. I can't really, you're hiding behind it. And I've had people say, absolutely. And both are possible, and both are different tools in my kit.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
I think, and I was worried at one time that it would somehow affect my versatility. That I would be like, oh, but why would I have that face on? And people have stopped asking. So I guess and people have stopped asking having seen it the first time.
Great.
So I figure That's success.
It absolutely is, and congratulations.
Thank you. When you're working with performers who haven't made that like connection to their aesthetic or their I don't know what surface they're going to be the most sturdy on when they haven't figured that out, do you help? Do you push? Do you help discern? Do you suggest? Do you say, well, I can't do anything but let you figure that out on your own? How do you, as a mentor and instructor, you know they're talented.
Yes.
You know they've got something, but damn it all, you don't know what makes them unique yet.
And I let them, what I do is encourage patience.
In them.
In them. Just be patient. You know, a lot of, I think in this era, everyone is waiting. Everyone wants that microwave success, that microwave act. And I'm like, well, what about a gumbo? How about we make a gumbo? Let's take our time. I mean, and for me, my latest queen act, I mean, that's been 3 years in the making. So I encourage them to take their time. And I say, well, what we can do right now is start with, what is your mission statement as an artist? What do you want the audience? I always bring it back to, okay, but what do you want the audience to feel? Okay, and now what song do you want to focus on right now? So let's just start there. Let's take our time. And as you grow as a person, then your message or persona or mission statement will become clearer. In my humble opinion. I encourage patience. There's no need to work it out.
They want to get like 30 acts in a row.
And I'm like, but why?
Yeah. Because they think that'll get them booked.
I'm like, and I say, no, what you need to get booked is an actual act that's great. That's what you need. And what you need to do also before thinking about getting booked is, let's talk about where you want to be booked. Where do you see yourself?
For a lot of people, anywhere.
And I
anywhere for $20.
And I encourage people not to do that.
Yeah.
Let's actually have a clear distinction of where.
Why do you want to work there?
Why do you want to work there? What is your mission?
Yeah.
What are you trying to do here? So I encourage patience and clarity.
Yeah, I think it gives a healthy respect to the places you're working. Like if you're just gonna work anywhere, then why would that place assume that you're any more loyal?
Well, that's also some way to think about it. And also, I just also want people to understand that, so if you know you want to do Neo, then maybe let's not, contact Dwayne Park, just or as an example.
Yeah.
Let's find out where
Figure out the niches.
Figure out where you belong. And I just tell them, because for me, I didn't belong in America. My biggest fan base is in Europe and Australia. Now, I'm getting more of a United States fan base now, but I was touring for years before a lot of people even knew who I was, because I wasn't, when I would try to get booked in America in these places where my peers were headlining, it was, we don't have a black slot this year, or your look is not really mainstream. So also what I encourage people is to find out where you do belong and spend more time in an environment that is loving and kind and caring, instead of trying to constantly get into a toxic environment where people don't like your art or like the way you look or like the color of your skin. Now, I do understand that, yes, you should fight for equal rights, but also, and I think it's because a lot of us come from these toxic childhoods. So it's like, that's comfortable to us to like, love me. And I'm trying to teach people, no, they don't want you at your show, then don't go. Go where you're wanted. Go where you're celebrated. Go where you will be loved, and build your reputation. And then if you want to come back after you've learned some things, after you've built yourself up, then you can go give to people and try to knock those doors down.
And then when those places come knocking for you, you can say, well, no, I'm good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which has happened to me quite a bit.
Yeah. You've seen some things come and go that weren't quite ready for you?
Yeah. And it's like, now I have a name, and it's like, oh, we want you to headline. It's like, no, remember you told me you didn't have a black role, or you hired me and then decided to go with someone who had more of a mainstream beauty, as you say. Yeah. So I encourage patience. clarity, and also self-love always.
Yeah.
Going to finding your community, finding the venues that love your art instead of fighting to get into a place that doesn't appreciate your art. And also teaching people that producers have the right to their vision, just like you have the right to your vision as the artist.
Yeah. They can have terrible reasons for it.
They can.
Yeah.
But that's their reason. That's their vision. Then let them have their vision and go somewhere else. And I didn't see like Murray Hill says, you don't see yourself being represented, then represent yourself. And that's what I did. I created my own door and opened it for myself.
I would like to thank you.
I'd like to thank you.
Before we call it a night, I want to give you an opportunity to tell the audience a little bit about. We talked about it a little bit off microphone. Your new project or a revitalization of a project you currently were working on.
Yeah, so Healing Through Seduction. I have been doing this workshop for years now, and it seems to be my latest calling. And so the Healing Through Seduction series or workshops, for me, my mission is to help people fall in love with their reflection so that they're not seeking surrogates out in this world to fill the voids from trauma, from abandonment, from abuse. If you're an artist, it's especially beneficial to you so that you can go on stage in your truth, and there's power in that. And you can go to an audition and not get hired and not fall apart because you're like, oh, my truth didn't work for their vision. And it's not you constantly seeking this validation from this festival or this producer or this show.
Or any inanimate objects.
Yes. And if you're, if the world is a stage, so if you're a performer or if you're a lawyer or if you're a housewife, the world is a stage. You're going to need to stand in your truth in order for people to truly respect you. And the relationship with ourselves is the blueprint for every relationship in our life. And nourishing our spirit is just as important as nourishing our body. If you don't eat several times a day, every day, you will perish, and your spirit is the same. And I want to teach people that it's important to love yourself and seduce yourself, and there's nothing selfish about that. Yeah, so that's I'm focusing a lot on my Healing Through Seduction workshops in the series right now. I've got I'm doing a lot of workshops in person. I do a lot of one-on-ones, and I also have a 10-day online program as well.
Oh, very nice. So where can everyone find you on the internet?
So, of course, you can find me on Instagram, the Perle Noire, PERLE NOIRE. And also my website is blackburlesquequeen.com because I am the original.
Well, thank you so much for
so much
inviting me into your home.
Yes, thank you for coming to Chez Noir.
Yes. And sharing with me and everybody else your truth as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, my love. Thank you so much.
You have been listening to WEBurlesque. This is Viktor Devonne. Thank you so much, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye, everybody. Thank you so much.
Hi, this is Viktor Devonne. Thank you so much for listening to Season 2 of WEBurlesque, the podcast. Special thank you to our Patreon supporters. That is Rob, Stormageddon, Kelly, Joseph, and Michelle. If you would like to support us via Patreon, you can go to the patreon.com/WEBurlesque. It is also in the footnotes of this episode. And you can also find us on any of your favorite podcast programs. If you can, please rate and review us there. It does help us out. It shows us in the search results of all of these places. It allows us to be seen. And if you also feel like it, you can go to WEBurlesque.com/shop, that's SHOP, and you can support us that way as well. Thank you so much. Talk to you soon.
I'm Commander Shepard, and this is...
Wait, you can't be Commander Shepard. I'm Commander Shepard.
Okay, we're both Commander Shepard, and we're here to tell you about our favorite podcasts on the Citadel.
Do you like narrative video games with deeply developed characters?
What about exploring complicated moral quandaries, like romancing aliens?
Then you should be listening to Reignite,
A show where two friends take a 10-year-old video game way too seriously.
and sometimes not seriously enough.
I'm Commander Shepard.
And I'm Commander Shepard.
We should go.